Hey guys, it's Ms.A, and in this lesson video, we are going to be tackling tricky text with passages from the ELA exam. All right, so what do you do if you get a passage that is just impossible to read? It happens to everybody, even the best readers. There's always something that's challenging, either because it's above your reading level or it's just not a topic that you're used to reading. For example, even though I am an excellent reader, if I was given something from like a medical journal or a medical textbook, that's not a field that I have a lot of expertise in. There would be a lot of domain-specific vocabulary specific to medicine, and I just wouldn't know what those words would mean. And having that much challenging vocabulary could make the text impossible to comprehend. All right, so basically, whenever you're reading and you encounter something that you don't understand, you want to use some fix-up strategies. It's kind of like being a construction worker and you have a problem in front of you. You have to know which tools. You have to have a variety of tools and a variety of resources to fix the problem. You might try one particular tool or one particular strategy that might not work, so you have to have a bunch of them as backup. So for reading, some of the fix-up strategies you might use is you might skip it. Now, if you're reading for class and you have to understand the whole text, this is not a good strategy. But if you're reading for a test is a very particular type of reading. So basically, you're reading to answer questions, and that's it. You don't necessarily have to enjoy the passages or remember them after the test. So if a question doesn't ask about it, just move on. You can also reread by not just reading it at the same pace, but slowing down or speeding up. Stopping and thinking, which we should always be doing no matter what, but especially if we're not understanding what we're reading. Just try to make connections to the text, connect with your prior knowledge, your real world knowledge, with other texts that you've read, what you already know about that topic, and retell, looking to really identify what the key ideas or the central ideas are. And then finally, annotating, leaving your your written tracks in the margins. It's a way to process what you've read, to really figure it out. And those are valuable notes that you can go back and review when you really kind of just want to summarize what the text was about. So again, jot down the key ideas in the margins. When you find vocabulary words you don't know, try to figure it out using context clues, and then in the margins, annotate what the word means. All right, let's talk a little bit more about number 2. When should you slow down and when should you speed up? Well, you basically want to slow down when you don't understand something that you've read. Sometimes reading too fast is the reason you don't understand what you've read, and reading it for a second time at a slower pace is actually going to help. Break the sentence into the smaller phrases. You want to speed up when a few unfamiliar words are making it hard to understand what you're reading. You don't want to let that really slow you down. Now, of course, you have to use your judgment. If there are 5 unknown words in a sentence, you can't really speed up. That's going to be almost impossible to comprehend. It's a good sign that that is just too far above your reading level. And as with all strategies, these strategies are hit and miss. It really depends on the person using them. It depends on the passage. If, for example, you're at a 6th grade reading level and the text is at a 12th grade reading level, there's really very little that you can do to comprehend it. There might just be a passage that no matter what is just too far above you. But these strategies are there to try. All right, so now we are going to apply the tackling tricky text strategy to a passage. Now this passage comes from the 2015 New York State ELA exam for 7th graders. It's called the Mozart season. Now another strategy that I always like to use during a test is to preview the questions first. This is going to be especially helpful with a text that is difficult because a lot of times the questions themselves and the answer choices will actually kind of give you a preview of what the story is about. All right, so question 8. Lines 1 through 8 contribute to the reader's understanding of the story by allowing the reader to immediately understand Allegra's state of mind. See, I already know that the character's name is Allegra. Sharing with the reader the frustration Allegra feels before the performance. I know the passage is about a performance. Emphasizing how important it is for Allegra to empty her mind of all thoughts. suggesting that Allegra's surroundings are less important than her feelings. Question 9. Why does Allegra think of Alice in Wonderland in lines 20 through 23? The size of the room makes her feel extremely small. So I know she's in a room. I know setting now. She's so nervous that she feels as if she might be shrinking. So is she nervous? She could be. That's a possibility. She feels uncomfortable with the jury behind the line of screens. All right, so I know that there's a jury, which when I think about a jury, I either think of a trial, but I know that's actually wrong. The previous question mentioned a performance, so this is like a contest performance. She's being judged. The boy before her makes her feel unsafe because of his skillful playing. All right, so they're playing something. Sounds like a music performance. All right, so I mean, just from 2 questions alone, I've learned a lot about what this story is about. 10. Based on lines 27 through 31, which statement best explains how the photograph helps Allegra? Okay, so I know there's a photograph. A photograph of what? It inspires a vision that prepares her for performing the music. Okay, so she has a vision. So there's going to be something with imagination in the passage. It reminds her that her great-grandmother was a teenage musician like her, right? I wonder if that's true. But now I know what the photograph is of, her great-grandmother. It provides a memory that creates a mood of disappointment, or it prompts her to recall a pleasant time composing music with her great-grandmother. Okay, so this is definitely a music performance. And if you compose music, I know from music class that means you're writing. So Allegra writes music too, not just plays it. 11. In line 41, the narrator compares the musical notes to flickerings of flame from the candle to show that the sounds are... Okay, I don't need to read the answers. I know that this is a figurative language, descriptive language question. 12. The author's repetition of Allegra taking a medium-sized breath in lines 30 through 31, 40, and 49 helped to create the feeling of agitation, release, controlled focus, or patience. Okay, medium-sized breath. 13. Read these sentences from lines 62 and 63. I look down at the scroll of my violin. All right, so she's a violin player. I know a lot about this passage just from questions. It's really amazing. It's like a seashell, as if there's such a story inside that you could never find out all of it. This simile suggests that Allegra. All right, I'm going to skip the answers. I learned what I need to from this question. 14. Which statement best expresses a theme of the story? All right, I'm going to skip that too because I need to figure out the theme on my own as I read the entire story. All right, so now it's time for my reading. During my reading, I'm going to be using the tricky text strategies. So I'm going to be monitoring my comprehension. I'm going to be stopping every so often, rereading when I need to, and annotating, speeding up, and slowing down. Okay, read the story, then answer questions 8 through 14. Allegra Shapiro is 12 years old and lives in Portland, Oregon. She is waiting for her turn to compete in the block competition where she will be playing music by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. All right, so it is a competition. A famous classical composer. In order to play well and to focus both before and during her performance, Allegra pictures images in her mind. Often she imagines her beloved great-grandmother, Elter Bubby Leah. All right, so a lot of this stuff I learned from the questions. So she's picturing images in her mind. I think that's what they mentioned in the question when they talked about visions. Okay. Excerpt from the Mozart Season by Virginia Woolf. As I looked at the keyboard of the piano, my mind tried to empty itself. It tried to pour all my thoughts down a chute of some kind. Okay, literally, pour her thoughts down a chute? No, this is figurative language. I could feel them sliding away, like a big balloon deflating, like a tank of something emptying. I felt my eyes bug out with the shock of it, and I saw my arms reach out to catch what was emptying out of me. Again, her arms are not literally reaching out. This is once again figurative language. So what is happening to her? I know that she's going to be competing, so is she feeling nervous? I'm going to put a question mark next to nervous. I closed my eyes and looked for the first movement first. There it was with its cadenza. All right, what's a cadenza? I see the footnote there. A solo inserted into a movement or section of music, typically near the end. All right, so she's looking for the first movement. So she's studying the music as a way to prepare? No, very confusing opening. Second movement, third, they were there with their notes in order with Mr. Kaplan's blue markings on the pages. Yeah, so she was looking at the music. And I'm thinking that if her thoughts are going out of her mind is getting empty. You don't actually want your mind to be empty. She has to remember the music. So this has to be her nerves. Very strange, my mind doing that. Yeah, definitely strange. This is not, so she's not doing it on purpose. I'm going to once again say nervous. I picked up my violin and played the third movement cadenza. It was there solid. It hadn't gone off anywhere. So she remembers the music. I wrapped Elter Bubby Leah's purse in its tissue paper and put it back in my violin case. I went down the hallway to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror. I was just a person in a blue dress standing in dim light in a public bathroom next to a towel machine. I turned around and went back to room 104 and sat down with my violin and bow in my hand. All right, so I'm thinking here, nothing really has happened that much. She carries her great-grandmother's purse. I'm going to say probably for luck. I was just a person in a blue dress. All right, nothing really happening. The envelope woman came and got me, and we walked down the hall and then down the stairs and then through a heavy door. The envelope woman. I mean, I guess this is somebody in charge of the competition. I don't know why she's called the envelope woman, but I don't think that really matters. I'm just going to keep reading. Suddenly the lights were very bright and the floor was very polished and there was a line of screens on my right. Why are there screens? It's a music competition. It's kind of weird. Several screens were lined up so the jury couldn't see any part of me, even my feet. The woman pointed to where I was supposed to stand. I went to the spot and stood. It was the place Steve Landauer, number 3, had just walked away from. I suddenly remembered Alice in Wonderland getting smaller and smaller. All right, I remember this was one of the questions. So I'm going to put a little note by there so I can go back to this. I propped myself firmly on my feet, looked down at them. They were the same size they'd been 5 minutes before, and I knew I wasn't shrinking. Of course she's not shrinking. I know it's a reference, an allusion to Alice in Wonderland. Why would she be thinking of Alice in Wonderland getting smaller and smaller? All right, well, if I was her, so I'm going to put myself in her shoes. If I was her and I was about to compete and I was nervous, and I felt like I was getting smaller and smaller, it would probably be because I was scared. Right? When you feel like you're small in a situation, you don't feel confident. You're the opposite, not confident. Okay, I decided to look at the vertical line down one of the screens. A man's voice came from the other side of the screens. Number 4, you may begin when you're ready. I thumbed my strings and heard the D string a shade flat. While I was turning it, I closed my eyes and saw Elter Bubby Leah's photograph with the purse and the goose and the broom. What? All right, well, she closed her eyes, so this is the vision. Because whatever she's seeing is in her mind. But I don't know what... I mean, a goose is an animal. And a broom? What? And into my vision came a teenage hand with a quill pen in it just at the edge of the photograph. Okay, so she's picturing the photo. Those must be the things that are in the photo. Music being written. All right, so if that's in the photo, that means that her great-grandmother was a musician. I listened in my mind for the rhythm, and I took a medium-sized breath and started. She listened for the rhythm, so that means she's remembering the music. Again, you have to remember the music because you have to have the music memorized in your head. The start was a good one. Notes came up out of the violin on time, in time. Things weren't blurred. It was fun. All right, so it starts out good. She's remembering what she has to play. Through the notes, I saw Elter Bubby Leah shooing her geese up a slope with her broom in Poland. Through the notes. All right, literally? through the notes? No, that can't make sense. So again, this has to connect back to her vision. So it's not literal, it's her vision. And this is her great-grandmother. Did she really know her great-grandmother, or is this all stuff she's making up in her head? I'm not sure. Very confusing. I really don't have enough information. The notes went scooting along. It was strange. I was able to hear every note clearly, every group of 16 notes, every little sforzando. And at the same time, I was seeing a movie of pastures and a little house in Suprazil. All right, so again, that's again part of her vision. This must be where the great-grandmother lived. The second movement. How many times, heavenly, and I'd gone to sleep listening to it, with our arms around each other. What? Okay, I gotta reread that and go a little bit slower. Okay, the second movement, that's the music. I know that a lot of classical music has movements, so it's like a part. It's like saying a part of the music, or a section of the music. How many times heavenly? It's a capital H, so this has to be the name of somebody. Because otherwise, why would you capitalize that? How many times heavenly and I'd gone to sleep listening to it, with our arms around each other? Maybe a pet? I reached inside my body for the key change and the rhythm change. All right, again, she's not literally reaching inside her body. When she says that, it's like her memories. She's reaching into her memories. For the key change, that's something with music. It's not a key, actual key. And the rhythm change, and I felt for the gentleness of it. I saw Leah, again, it's her grandmother, her great-grandmother. A little girl in a long white nightgown climbing into her bed by candlelight. Okay. She could not have possibly, if I think about this, have known her great-grandmother as a little girl. So all of this has to be imagination. This is what she thinks of her great-grandmother. It's like a made-up story. For whatever reason, this is what she has imagined as her great-grandmother's life. Climbing into her bed by candlelight, and I took a medium-sized breath and played. The notes sounded like little flickerings of flame from the candle, little bright lights floating in a dark room. I played it for her to drop off to sleep in her feather bed with her braids spread out on the pillow. Okay, again, this is in her imagination. Again, because there's absolutely zero chance she knew her great-grandmother as a child, and she certainly didn't play music for her great-grandmother to try to get her to sleep. So this is probably how Allegra plays music, by imagining she's playing it for her great-grandmother. It helps her be like a really great musician. That's what I'm thinking. The third movement, the Rondo. If you turn on the radio just in time to hear this movement, you think it's such a happy thing. Those alternating sections, dances. And yeah, when you pay close attention, there's a kind of fragile sound. As if something's going to break somewhere, but you don't know where. And little silences come up between the sections. I looked into what was going on in my mind. Again, she's still imagining. And I saw the early morning waking Leah up with the sun coming in. A blessing. All right, again, this is still the vision. I took a medium-sized breath and began. She woke up in the sunshine, and she was a real girl in a real house. All right, see, if I wasn't reading closely, this could trick me and think, oh, there's really a girl, Leah? Well, yes, but it's still just her imagination. Like, Leah, her great-grandmother, was real, but that was 100 years ago, and it doesn't mean that she's real right now during the performance. All right, I could see the grass and the flowers growing as she walked outside. All right, see, again, this is a very tricky text. They're writing it as if Allegra is really seeing it right now. She's not. She's seeing it in her head. So this is another example of it being in her imagination. This is part of the vision. And I could feel a solid ground under her feet. And during the cadenza, she was scampering along very happy. And I got so carried away with the little girl in the story in my mind that I played an E sharp a little bit askew. My finger came down on it too sideways. But I was happy. I was happy with the sounds of Mozart coming up out of the wood. And as I moved toward the ending, it felt right. The last three notes came out just the way I liked them, balanced, even, each one of them getting softer until the last one just skips away into the air. So basically, the vision helps her. Even though it makes her play one note a little bit wrong, she still is very happy, and she feels like the music matches her imagination of her grandmother. I took my violin down off my shoulder. I was in Portland, Oregon, and I just finished doing what I'd promised and feared to do. I was 12 years old. Wow, that's really young. I did not expect that. Standing with my 2 feet on the floor and my arms hanging down. I might never even tell anybody about Leah and her goose and her feather bed in my mind. A whole story of her had happened in the music. I looked down at the scroll of my violin. It's like a seashell, as if there's such a story inside that you can never find out all of it. So this really shows you that music, don't write with a highlighter, that music creates a story. It has life to it. A man's voice came from the other side of the screen. Thank you, number 4. Okay, actually, I don't know why I circled that. That's not really that important. That's just her number. Okay. All right, so now would be my time to go back and actually answer the questions, which will be a separate video. So I'm just going to self-assess how I use the tackling tricky text strategy. So did I reread by slowing down? Yes, there were certain points where I had to slow down. Did I reread by speeding up? Kind of. There was one part where I didn't think it was that important and I kind of skipped it and just kept reading. Skipping parts that the question didn't ask about. Actually, that's more of what I did. I guess I didn't really speed up at any point. Did I stop and think? Yeah, this is the one that I use the most. Were these strategies helpful? Yeah, very helpful, especially annotating, stopping, and thinking. So that's how you use the tackling tricky text strategy. I would highly recommend practicing it with a strategy on your own. See if you can use it and if it actually helps you answer more questions correctly.